approximately 1,050 words / approximately 7 minutes. The folder came back across the desk on 2 fingers. Todd Spivey didn't set it down gently. He didn't apologize. He slid it, the way you slide a menu back to a waiter after you've already decided you're not hungry. And then he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands and smiled the smile he had been practicing since his first day on the floor. "Look," he said, "we love community. We really do. But these types of businesses, the model just doesn't pencil out for a commercial line of credit." Aveline Okafor-Dumont looked at the folder. Then she looked at him. She did not raise her voice. She did not shift in her chair. She picked up the folder, set it in her lap, and said, "Thank you, Todd," using his name the way people use a name when they want you to know they've remembered it. And then she asked him one question before she stood to leave. He laughed when he answered it. He had no idea why she was asking. She walked out through the lobby without hurrying. Her phone buzzed twice in her coat pocket. She silenced it without looking down. She had arrived at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. No appointment, no assistant, no car service waiting at the curb. Or, if there was, no one would have known it. She took a number from the dispenser by the door, found a seat in the row of blue plastic chairs, and waited. She was the only person in the branch wearing a blazer. The man to her left was in a work shirt with a plumber's logo on the chest. The woman to her right was balancing a toddler on one knee and a stack of deposit slips on the other. Aveline sat between them with the same unhurried posture she brought to boardrooms, and she waited her turn. The folder on her lap contained 2 pages, no letterhead, no logo. An executive summary of a business she had described in her number ticket form as a small holding company looking to expand locally. Nothing about it announced anything. That was the point. When Todd Spivey called her number, he was already scanning the next ticket in his hand. Todd Spivey had a Rotary Club plaque on his shelf and a framed photograph of himself shaking hands with a local senator, and he arranged both so that anyone sitting across from his desk could see them without having to look for them. He glanced at the folder for perhaps 4 seconds. Aveline had begun her second sentence, something about a phased acquisition strategy across 3 metro markets, when he cut her off. "Look," he said, and the word carried the weight of a door closing. "We love community. We really do." He said community the way people say it when they mean the opposite of serious. But these types of businesses, the model just doesn't pencil out for a commercial line of credit. He slid the folder back on 2 fingers. And then he waited, with the particular patience of someone who has delivered this sentence many times and knows exactly how it ends. What he did not know was what was inside the folder. What he did not know was what was already done. If this is your first time here, welcome. This channel is for the people who believe the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how long it takes. If that's you, consider subscribing. You belong here. And to everyone who keeps coming back, this one is for you. She thanked him by name. "Thank you, Todd." She said it without edge. She said it the way you say something you will remember saying. Then, already half risen from the chair, she paused. Not the pause of someone who forgot something, the pause of someone who has one more thing to confirm. "Do you know," she said, "who holds the note on this building's lease?" Todd Spivey laughed. It was a short, reflexive laugh, the kind that fills space when a question doesn't compute. "Corporate," he said. "Way above my pay grade, ma'am." Aveline nodded once. "That's what I thought," she said. The exchange lasted 6 seconds. To Todd, it registered as small talk, the kind of thing people say when they're stalling on their way out the door. He had already begun turning toward his next ticket. She walked through the lobby, past the teller windows, past the row of blue plastic chairs, past the number dispenser by the door. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She silenced it without looking down. Outside on the sidewalk, Aveline paused. She looked back through the plate glass window at Todd, already laughing with a colleague, and said quietly to no one, "That's 7 branches now." The truth was already in motion. She just hadn't shown anyone yet. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a room where someone underestimated exactly the wrong person? The end screen has more. Go deeper there. Thanks for being here. Pick whichever video on the end screen calls to you. 7 branches. Not 7 complaints. Not 7 bad days. 7 documented incidents across 7 locations, across 14 months, conducted with the same quiet methodology. The same plastic chair, the same number from the same dispenser, the same plain manila folder placed on a loan officer's desk and watched for what happened next. Todd Spivey was not exceptional. That was, in its own way, the most important finding of all. The offices of Okafor-Dumont Capital Partners occupied the 31st floor of a glass tower, 6 blocks from Pinnacle Community Bank Branch 7. A full floor, not a suite, not a shared co-working arrangement. A floor, the kind that required its own elevator code and had its own reception desk staffed by someone whose sole job was to decide who got past the frosted glass doors behind her. Aveline stepped off the elevator at 9:47 that morning and walked past reception without stopping. The receptionist didn't look up either, not from dismissal, but from the simple recognition that Aveline Okafor-Dumont was not someone who needed to be announced in her own building. Constance was already moving. She had been in since 7:30, which was not unusual. What was unusual was the particular binder she was pulling from the credenza along the east wall. Thick, tabbed, spiral-bound. Its cover labeled in clean black type, PCB Subsidiary Audit, Branch Level CRA, Community Reinvestment Act Compliance. She pressed a yellow sticky note to the front cover, smoothed it flat with one finger, and set the binder at the near end of the table. The note read, Flagged, Branch 7, Spivey. Aveline set her bag on the chair, looked at the binder, and looked at Constance. Branch 7 is clean on camera authorization? She asked. Confirmed this morning, Constance said. Footage is being preserved. Timestamps run from the acquisition close date forward. Aveline nodded once, the way someone nods when a thing they already expected to be true is confirmed as true. What the viewer watching Branch 7's lobby footage would have seen, had they known to look, was this. 11 days before Aveline sat in that plastic chair and took her number from that dispenser, a quiet legal instrument had transferred controlling interest in Meridian Bank Group, Pinnacle Community Bank's parent holding company, to a Delaware-registered entity called Sable Meridian Holdings, LLC. The trade press had covered it in 2 short paragraphs, buried in the deal flow digest of a financial publication most of Todd Spivey's colleagues did not read. The acquiring entity was Sable Meridian Holdings. The name Okafor-Dumont appeared nowhere in the headline. It appeared, in full, on page 41 of the acquisition agreement. The lobby camera authorization had not been reactive. Aveline had initiated it the morning after the acquisition closed. Standard operating procedure she had written into the subsidiary governance protocol herself, applied uniformly across all 11 Pinnacle Community Bank branches from the moment Meridian Bank Group passed into her firm's hands. Every branch, every lobby, every timestamp. It was not surveillance in the dramatic sense, it was governance, the kind that looks like paperwork until the moment it matters enormously. She reviewed the Branch 7 authorization log now, not urgently, not with any visible satisfaction, simply confirming that the procedure she had designed was running as designed. Then she closed the window and looked at Constance across the table. Add his CRA file to the subsidiary governance review, Aveline said. Don't rush it, do it right. Constance wrote 2 words in her portfolio without looking up. Then she set her pen down, straightened the binder, and was quiet for a moment. You know, she said, his manager co-signed 3 of the flagged denials. Aveline looked up from the table. I know, she said. Pull Elsie's file too. If you've ever watched someone absorb an insult in silence and wondered whether they were letting it go or simply letting it land in the right place, leave a comment below. What do you think Todd Spivey would have done differently if you'd opened that folder? The binder was already 3 inches thick before Aveline ever took a number at Branch 7. That detail matters, because the story most people would tell about Tuesday morning, woman walks in, gets dismissed, walks out, is missing the part that changes everything about what that morning actually was. Constance had spent 11 days building the audit before Aveline set foot in that lobby. 36 months of Branch 7 lending data pulled through the standard CRA compliance framework, Community Reinvestment Act, the same framework every federally regulated bank is required to follow, the same one regulators check, the same one that sits quietly in the background of every loan denial until someone decides to actually look at it. What the data showed was not subtle. Branch 7 had denied loan applications from Black and Latino applicants at a rate 340% higher than comparable branches serving similar demographics across the same metropolitan area. Over 36 months. Not a bad quarter, not an outlier year. 36 months of consistent, documented divergence from every benchmark around it. Todd Spivey's name appeared on 61% of those denial decisions. Constance didn't need to editorialize. The numbers did it themselves. But here is where the story shifts, and where anyone who watched Tuesday morning and saw only a quiet woman absorbing a small humiliation needs to go back and look again. The plain folder, the plastic chair, the number she pulled from the dispenser and waited on, seated between a young couple with a mortgage printout and an elderly man counting deposit slips. None of it was accidental. All of it was methodology. Aveline had designed the protocol herself. No appointment, because a walk-in tests the experience a real customer gets, not the experience a bank prepares for an inspection. No briefcase, no credentials visible, because the point was to arrive looking exactly like the applicants whose files were already in that binder. A 2-page summary in a plain manila folder, because she wanted to see what a loan officer did with a document they hadn't been primed to respect. Branch 7 was not the beginning. It was the 7th stop. In the 2 weeks before Tuesday, Aveline had walked into 6 other branches under the same parent network. Same folder, same protocol, same quiet, unhurried posture. She had sat in 6 other waiting areas, been called to 6 other desks, and listened to 6 other loan officers make their assessments. She took notes afterward in the car. She silenced her phone when it buzzed. She observed. Some branches performed differently. Branch 7 did not. Now consider that question she asked on her way out. She had stood, thanked Todd by name, picked up her folder, the folder he had slid back with 2 fingers, and paused just long enough to ask him one thing. Did he know who held the note on the building's lease? Todd had laughed. Corporate, he'd said, way above my pay grade. And Aveline had nodded and said, that's what I thought. He took it for small talk. It was not small talk. That evening, Todd was at a bar 2 blocks from the branch, recounting the visit the way a man recounts a minor inconvenience that confirmed everything he already believed about himself. Had one of those pitches today, he said, leaning back on his stool. You know the type. Community development, minority-owned, the whole song and dance. I gave her 5 minutes and sent her on her way. The colleague to his left laughed. The colleague to his right, younger, quieter, a lanyard of a slightly different color, did not. She took a sip of her drink, said something about needing to check in with a friend, and was gone within 10 minutes. Her name was Petra Anwell. She was a junior compliance officer at Branch 7, had been for 14 months, and she had heard Todd describe his loan decisions in that tone before. She had heard it often enough, in fact, that 3 months earlier she had done something about it. She had filed an internal concern report through Meridian Bank Group's compliance channel, the proper channel, the documented channel, the one that was supposed to trigger an escalation review within 30 business days. She had described the pattern she observed. She had attached what she could attach. She had submitted it and waited. Nothing had moved. For 3 months, her report had sat in a queue marked under review, a status that, in the language of institutional inertia, means something between we received this and we have decided not to decide. She had followed up once. A form response came back. She had not followed up again because she understood the unspoken arithmetic of her position. But tonight was different. Tonight, Todd had described a Tuesday morning visit from a woman in a charcoal blazer who had asked him about the building's lease and walked out without hurrying. And something in that description had lodged in Petra Anwell's chest like a splinter. She opened a new message in the compliance portal. She thought for a moment. Then she began to type. I need to know if there's been a change in who owns this company. Petra Anwell hit send at 11:47 on a Wednesday night and then sat very quietly, listening to the sound of her own apartment. She didn't know who would read it. She didn't know if anyone would. She had filed the original concern report 3 months ago through the proper internal channel, the one the compliance handbook said to use, and it had landed somewhere and gone silent, the way complaints sometimes do when the person they name has a Rotary Club plaque on his wall and a manager who signs his performance reviews with a flourish. But something had shifted. She could feel it the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm, not seeing it yet, only knowing. She closed the laptop and went to bed. She would find out soon enough. Across the city, at an hour Petra would have recognized as early, Constance Mburu was already at the table. The folder had come back from the branch the same day, returned with Todd Spivey's fingerprints metaphorically all over it, though of course he'd only touched it with 2 fingers and the edge of his dismissal. Constance had logged it into evidence the moment Aveline walked back through the door that Tuesday afternoon. It had sat in the file since then, waiting for this moment. She spread it open now and let the document speak for itself. 1 page, redacted in 3 places, as required by the non-disclosure terms still technically in effect for another 18 days. But the acquiring entity's name was not redacted. The deal structure was not redacted. The effective date of controlling interest transfer, 11 days before Aveline walked into Branch 7 and took a number and sat in a plastic chair, was not redacted. It was, in plain language, the proof that Pinnacle Community Bank's parent holding company had a new owner. Aveline had placed that document in a plain manila folder, carried it to the branch herself, set it on Todd Spivey's desk, and introduced it as the executive summary for a small holding company looking to expand locally. Todd had slid it back across the desk with 2 fingers without reading past the first line. Constance closed the folder. She had worked alongside Aveline for 11 years. She understood methodology. She understood the difference between a provocation and a protocol. And she understood, with the particular clarity of someone who has spent a career reading documents other people didn't bother to read, exactly what it meant that Todd Spivey had handed back the deed to his own house without opening it. She picked up her phone and made 1 call. Not to Aveline. Aveline already knew. To the governance office, to confirm that the certified letter had gone out. Harwick Elsie had been branch manager for 9 years. In 9 years, he had learned to read the temperature of a letter before he opened it, the weight of the envelope, the return address, the font choice on the label. This one had arrived by certified mail, which already meant something. The return address read Meridian Bank Group, Office of Subsidiary Governance, which was not a department he had ever received mail from before. He read it once standing up. Then he sat down and read it again. Branch 7 is hereby subject to an immediate subsidiary compliance review. All personnel files are under hold pending governance audit. This action is initiated under authority of the acquiring parent entity, effective as of the date of controlling interest transfer. And at the bottom, in the standard signatory block where the name of the authorizing officer appeared, Aveline Okafor-Dumont, Chair, Governance Committee, Okafor-Dumont Capital Partners. He set the letter down on his desk with the particular care of a man who has just understood that the floor beneath him is not where he thought it was. He walked out of his office and across the branch floor without making eye contact with anyone. Todd was at his desk, badge lanyard looped over the back of his chair, laughing at something on his screen. Elsie said quietly, "My office." Todd read it once. Then he read it again. The way people read things they are hoping will say something different the second time. The senator photo was visible on the wall behind Elsie's head. The Rotary plaque caught the light. Neither of them noticed. "That woman," Todd said. "The one Tuesday." Elsie didn't let him finish. "She didn't come here for a loan, Todd." The silence that followed was not dramatic. It was not the silence of a confrontation or a revelation delivered with fanfare. It was the silence of 2 men sitting inside a moment they could not go back behind, understanding at the same time that every word Todd had said that morning, every laugh, every 2-fingered slide of a folder across a desk, had happened in a building that was already hers. Todd reached for his phone. Elsie said, "Don't." He let the pause do its work. HR reports to corporate now. He looked at Todd steadily. And corporate is her. The silence in Harwick Elsie's office lasted a long time. Todd Spivey set the letter down on the desk with the careful, deliberate movement of a man who has just realized the floor is not where he thought it was. He did not call HR. He did not call anyone, because Elsie was right, and they both knew it now. Corporate was her. 3 floors above the city, Aveline was already on page 41. The governance review had taken 11 days to assemble, 11 days of branch data, personnel files, CRA reports, and lobby camera timestamps. The timestamps she had ordered the morning the acquisition wire cleared, across every subsidiary branch as standard operating procedure. Not a personal grievance, a protocol. The kind of thing you build into an acquisition when you know what you're buying and why it needed buying. Constance turned a page and slid it across without comment. Aveline read it once, then she signed it. Todd Spivey's separation notice. Processed through Meridian's standard HR protocol. No special handling, no expedited drama. The same form, the same process, the same language used for any employee whose conduct created documented institutional liability. That was the point. This was not personal. It was never going to be personal. The next page was Harwick Elsie's Performance Improvement Plan. 90-day review, third-party oversight, measurable benchmarks. The kind of document that tells a man exactly how much rope he has left and exactly how long he has to decide what to do with it. Aveline initialed it and moved on. The third document was the one that had taken the most work. A branch-level remediation order for Branch 7, mandatory third-party CRA re-auditing, a community reinvestment commitment of $2.4 million over 3 years, and a new lending practice review framework to be applied to every denial decision going forward. It was the kind of order that doesn't make headlines. It doesn't have a villain's name in it. It just quietly changes what happens to the next person who walks through that door with a folder. Constance looked up. Petra Anwell's complaint has been formally elevated and logged. She's been notified. Aveline nodded. Make sure she knows her name stays protected. Here is what the lobby camera footage confirmed and what the governance review made irrefutable. 3 months before Aveline walked into Branch 7, Petra Anwell had submitted an internal concern report. She had pulled the denial data herself. She had flagged Todd Spivey's name. She had filed it through the proper channel, logged it, and waited. And nothing had moved, because the chain it was filed into reported to a management structure that had every incentive to let it sit. Then Aveline's acquisition closed, and the chain changed. Aveline had not created the case against Todd Spivey. She had confirmed it, elevated it, given it the institutional weight it had always deserved and never received. The branch visit, the plastic chair, the manila folder, the 2 buzzes she silenced without looking down. That was not the origin of what happened to him. Petra Anwell was the origin. The data was the origin. The 340% disparity across 36 months was the origin. Aveline had simply become the structure that finally made it impossible to ignore. She didn't go back to Branch 7 in a blazer. She didn't bring Constance. She didn't bring a folder. She wore a dark coat over a simple blouse and took a seat across from the newly assigned interim branch officer, a careful, direct woman named Serrano who had transferred from the East Side branch and had a reputation, according to the personnel files, for running the cleanest CRA numbers in the Metro portfolio. The interim officer introduced her by full title for the first time in the branch. Aveline Okafor-Dumont, Managing Partner, Okafor-Dumont Capital Partners, Chair of the Meridian Bank Group Governance Committee. The words landed in the room without fanfare. They went through the reinvestment plan line by line. The CRA targets, the community outreach commitments, the new small business lending framework, the third-party auditing schedule. Aveline asked questions. She listened to the answers. She made 2 notes in the margin of her copy and said she'd have Constance follow up on the timeline for the second quarter review. She was standing to leave when the interim officer asked the question, "Why come back here yourself?" Aveline paused at the door. The lobby was quiet behind her. The same plastic chairs, the same tile, the same afternoon light coming through the same plate glass windows she had looked back through 11 days after an acquisition closed, watching a man laugh about the woman he'd just turned away. "Because the people he turned away deserve to see that this branch is different now," she said, "and I want to be able to say, I watched it happen." She walked out through the lobby without hurrying. The truth, it turns out, does not always announce itself. Sometimes it sits in a plastic chair and takes a number. Sometimes it files a concern report and waits 3 months in a queue. Sometimes it clears a wire transfer and silences a phone without looking down. It moves at its own pace, through the proper channels, with the proper documentation, and when it finally arrives, it doesn't need to raise its voice. It just signs the page and moves on to the next one. If you followed this story from the beginning, you already know the folder was never about a loan. It was always about what was inside it and whether anyone would bother to read. Drop a comment below. Did you see the acquisition twist coming, or did Chapter 4 land like a door closing? Tell me where it hit you, because this story was built for people who pay attention. If this series is the kind of thing that belongs on your screen, subscribe. This is what we make. Stories where the truth was always there, waiting for the right moment to surface. Thanks for watching. The end screen has more.